Now, as we speak, there are 3 suspects who are standing trial over their connection with what played out in Orire local government area of Oyo State. We're working our device to find out what the decision of the court is, as well as what exactly is this service-wide vote that is bringing controversy between Atiku Abubakar and the APC. Welcome to the program. I'm Jeff Fields and it's Lunchtime Politics, but let's get started with the headlines. 3 suspects in connection with Orire abduction plead guilty to concealment of members of proscribed Ansari terror group. President of the United States, Donald Trump, commends President Bola Tinubu in Nigeria's anti-terrorism war and protection of Christians as DSS rescues 4 polytechnic students in Zamfara. The presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, Atiku Abubakar, trade words with the All Progressives Congress over rising service-wide votes of 2025. But the 2026 budget will explore the issue on the program. Now, we have been following developments in the courts as far as those 3 individuals who are in connection or suspected to be connected with the Orire abduction are concerned. As we speak, news just in, and this is breaking news, that the court has sentenced the suspects to life imprisonment from the date of the arrest. The suspects, 3 of them, have now been sentenced to life imprisonment. They are arraigned in connection with issues around the kidnap of Oyo school children and their teachers in Orire local government area of Oyo State. They include Abdul Razak Umar, known as Abu Khalifa, Abu Khalid, Yunusa Musa, known as Yunusa bin Musa, and Shamsu Adamusani, known as Abu Itusa. They pleaded guilty to count 6 and count 4 that bordered on concealment and members of the proscribed Ansari group. The 10-count charge filed before the Federal High Court preferred against them by the Department of State Services borders on terrorism, kidnapping, concealment, incitement, and illegal mining. Defendants, all of Suleja local government area of Niger State, are alleged to have conspired with one Mohammed Sani, Jubril Mohammed, and Ibrahim Habab between January and May 2026 for the kidnap. So the latest is that they have now been sentenced to life imprisonment, because that's what the prosecution counsel leading that prosecution had asked the court, that since they pleaded guilty to the charges, why keep sentencing for another day? So let's read out some of the things they have been charged for: conspiracy, aiding, kidnapping, concealment, being members of proscribed Ansari group, providing training and instruction, incitement, and illegal mining. They'll spend the rest of their lives in jail. And away from that, let's tell you how the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission that has said that the Nigerian police force is having the highest number of suspected ghost workers. According to the commission's chairman, Mr. Musa Adamu Aliyu, the discovery was found during the ICPC's payroll verification exercise conducted across several federal government institutions. 908 ghost workers in at least 50 ministries, departments, and agencies, recovering about 942 million naira allegedly paid as fraudulent salaries. Other affected institutions include the Federal Ministry of Electricity, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, with 17 suspected fake workers each, the Federal Ministry of Health, with 15, the Office of the Head of Civil Service of the Federation. I think that should be Ministry of Power or so. All right, we'll bring all of that discrepancy later on the program. But let's tell you how the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has commended President Bola Tinubu in efforts in insecurity, tackling insecurity in Nigeria, particularly as it affects Christian communities. In a letter dated July the 6th, 2026, and made public by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Mr. Bayo Nanuga, President Trump says he's honored to stand with Nigeria in the fight against terrorism and to help make the country stronger and more prosperous. According to President Trump, the U.S.-Nigeria relations is crucial at this time, and the expectation is that at the end, it puts the conflict across West Africa and beyond. President Trump also says Nigeria-U.S. 2026 Defense Cooperation Roadmap remains a framework for both countries for confronting terrorism. And again, let's tell you about our breaking news that 3 suspects in connection with the abduction and the killing of a school teacher, actually 2 school teachers, for their role in that particular exercise have now been found guilty, or they pleaded guilty rather, to the charges reeled against them, especially the one that has to do with concealment and being members of Ansar, as well as other charges preferred against them by the federal government through the Department of State Services. They've now been sentenced to life imprisonment. They include Mr. Abdulrazak Umar, Mr. Yunusa Musa, and Shams Adamu Sani. They all have aliases in their name. So that is the latest coming from the Federal High Court. Life imprisonment is the verdict. Well, today we're not talking security, but we're going to be bringing you details as a break. But let's talk about what has been this back and forth between Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the African Democratic Congress, and the APC. Now, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, who is the presidential candidate of the APC, says that how come that the service-wide vote, more like what is provided for contingencies, not attached to any ministry, department, or agency, but in the budget office for past eventualities, emergencies, what you will call your own miscellaneous, something preparing the state for any eventuality before we begin to look for budgetary provision. He says that the amount, he noted that the service-wide vote allocation rose from 638 billion naira in 2025 budget to 12.8 trillion in 2026 appropriation bill act, rather, representing an increase of almost 2,000%. So he's asking why. Well, an economist joins me, Mr. Boniface. Dr. Boniface Chizia is an economist who joins me right here on the program. Dr. Boniface, thank you for coming on the program.
Very much for having me, yes.
I've been seeing the back and forth between the APC and Atiku Abubakar. So I think let's posit the argument. The argument is not whether service vote is legal or not. I think it's legal. Everybody knows that it's basic in budgeting. What the debate over is what happened between 2025, that this budget was less than 1 trillion, according to him, and now it is 12 trillion in 2026. Does he have a question, so the question will be, doesn't he have a reasonable ground to suspect that something is not right, or this is just hyperbole?
Well, I think that we should commend Atiku. I think it's playing a role which not many people are playing within the system. So I think we need to have some people put this government, on the spot and challenge them so that the impunity in the land is challenged. So I think that what he's doing is quite commendable. But I think that I don't understand the argument, because service by convention received wisdom. Service-wide votes, the benchmark is supposed to be about 5% of your budget. And so everything has grown over the years, and once it's related to your budget, there should be no arguments about it. And so I have not done due diligence on this, but I think that I would expect that the budget office would not go against the convention. So if it's gone, if you look at the absolute figures and then they've gone, they've bloated over the period, I think it's a reflection of the increase in the budget size. So everything is now in trillions. At some point in time, we talked about these things in billions. So I can't see the argument. I think the argument really is that how is it being utilized? Because since it's a contingency, it's an aspect of our voting system that could be subject to abuse. Because it's not tied down to any specific expenditure item. So it's like you said in your intro, it's supposed to attend to things, unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen developments. That's what it should attend to. But in this budget, there are also lots of more greater challenges. So when you have budget heads that don't make any sense, budget heads that are not, you cannot see on ground, those are more important. So I can't, where I stand, I can't see the argument. We should be more concerned. If, for instance, is concerned is that the budget contingency votes. Budget service-wide votes is not being appropriately utilized. Maybe he wants to ask for accountability, how it's been spent, and that will make better sense to me. So that's my take on that matter.
Dr. Boniface, before we jump off that matter, because I have a lot to unpack with you, what is the statutory provision for service-wide vote? 10%, 5%? Because I know you mentioned 5%. So I did a bit of analytics on our budget, which is about 68 trillion, if I'm correct. So 5% should be in the region of 3.4 trillion. How did we get 12 point something trillion? Because I can also see that the DG of the Budget Office, Tanimu Yakubu, has come out to say, look, we're not just throwing service-wide vote. It's actually allocated to some part of what we intend to spend. So he said personnel cost, 2.18 trillion. Other recurrent expenditure, 1.52 trillion. Capital expenditure, 9.12 trillion. Is this justifiable?
No, that's not what budget service-wide vote is meant to do. You have those items, you have budget for those items, and then if you even want contingencies tied directly to those items, it should be tied within those. As you make those allocations, so you can do that. So if you are going to have, you suspect you'll have cost overruns and so on as you do your projection, assuming we do due diligence in coming up with our figures, and then you can build in. So you build in some slack. But when you talk of service-wide, so I think that's some misconception here. I think that's some misunderstanding the way it is being utilized. So you don't begin to bury expenditures for other parts of the budget in the service-wide vote. Service-wide vote is supposed to be something that stays here, because you don't have some cost overruns and so on, or you find out some calculations have been omitted, and then so you begin to run back, and then so if that's really where you respect the budgets, but we put the budgets here and we don't implement them. So we put the budget, and so, but I think that is concerned, if I hear Atiku very well, is that this money is going to be diverted, So I think that's the challenge, and that's why we are not making the sort of progress we should make, So like I said earlier on, I commended him, for the job I think he's doing, I think that he's really standing up and doing the job of the opposition, which means he wants to put this government on his foot, so that the government will be accountable. Because if you look at what's happening now, is that the various other parts of the economy, they're not doing what they should do. So you have the state capture. So you take the National Assembly. They come and sing on a mandate to stand. There's no due diligence being done, and nobody is scared of what they are going to do in terms of oversight. And so if an individual, you have the standing and status of someone like Abubakar Atiku is doing that, so we commend him for that. But I think that where I stand, I have budget experience. That's not budget service-wide budgeting is an overall provision that is being made and is being kept there in case there are things, unforeseen developments that we need to cater to. I think that's exactly what it is.
All right, Dr. Boniface, let's talk about the health of the economy. Let's begin with the Monetary Authority that had had its MPC a few days ago and has retained all parameters, 26.5%, while other parameters remain. Still quite high, is unmoving, well, even though the inflation number sits at about 15%, it has sat at 15%, oscillating marginally between 15.0 to 15.91, the recent one. But you can see food inflation has gone up by 100% from about 8 to about 17%. Unemployment numbers, the MBS is not doing us any good because they've not been consistent in releasing their numbers. We see these numbers in the US every month, but for us, I think the last time we saw the real unemployment numbers was about 2024. So sometimes you wonder by what is the MPC working to make a decision, because the FOMC, for instance, they're either pandering towards what the NFP is saying, or they're pandering towards what the CPI is saying, or finding a midpoint to manage the economy. What do you think that the MPC responds to in keeping these interest numbers high?
Well, the central bank, in fact, should, in some climes, central bank should have a model of the economy. So it doesn't, to a large extent, it doesn't depend. It has a research department, so it doesn't. It might take a few things which the central bank does not monitor. From the Bureau of Statistics, they could do that. But I think that inflation, the rate has been there, has been consistent, like you said earlier on in your observation. We've had some gyrations, so 15.991 to 15.93 and so on. So it's neither here nor there. So we have the rate of inflation. The rate of inflation is high. So and then I think that the focus should be to make sure that it drops. So it's, the Monetary Policy Committee has gone for stability, and we can't. I think it's easier to manage stability, than for you to begin to manage change. So I think that they are doing that, and I think that we need to be very careful with what we are seeing now. We mustn't take it for granted. We've not been here for quite some time. So I think that I take the side of the central bank that I think that we need to trade carefully. I think that's exactly what we are seeing.
Yeah. So, sir, let's move from there to I'm doing some numbers jamming that you will help me. I like numbers. I like data. So I want to take it in bits. So let's talk about this budget. First, just generically talk to us, because I'm going to come to the implementation. In fact, as a person and somebody who understands economics, I'm no longer interested in earmarks. I'm not even interested in anything. I'm interested in spending, because I think we have a spending problem. As a country that we don't pay attention to. We just focus on earmarks and releases, spending problem. So talk to us about the president in the last budget presentation in December to the National Assembly joint session had promised all of us that this era of budget overlap, multiple budgets, will end by March. As we speak, 2025 budget is still being implemented. In fact, it was 70% of the capital component. They dropped it to 30%. That they are still struggling. And then we have target, the tax collector saying they've exceeded revenue target, but we still haven't met our target in terms of the collective of our budget. What do you make of this budget overlap and how it's affecting the economy generally?
I think that the discipline we should bring to bear on budgeting in this environment is absolutely lacking. We're not doing what we should do. Budgeting, we don't seem to have a correct sense of what budget should be for an economy, even for a household. So where you have discipline, the budget should act as a blueprint, for you to make sure you operate. You've planned how you're going to operate, and then you've made some projections and so on and so forth, and you've arrived at gaps, and you've taken some steps to make sure that the gaps are taken care of. But I tell you here, I don't think the budget has been implemented. I think for us, it's just a mere ritual. We just play. Yeah, at some point in time in the past, we had mid-year budget presentations. We took budgeting seriously, and all of us would gather, to listen, and then we'll take those in charge, we'll take them to task and so on. We ask questions, and there was some semblance of some professionalism being attended to, the way the budget is being managed. I tell you, all things we're having at some point in time, we had about 3 budget years, being implemented at the same time. It should not happen. We should go back to rolling 3-year rolling plan. Because invariably, when you have a capital budget, it's very difficult for you to completely. Very few capital budgets that you can implement under 1 year. That's inevitable overrun. And so where you have a 3-year budget ruling plan, and what that does is that when that year goes, that you attach the next year. So at each point in time, you have with you a 3-year projection. We have to struggle to get back to that. But I wonder if the budget office, has the capacity, to begin to do this. And when you talk about the capacity and also the discipline, and you look at what's coming out about the budget, so we're having allocations being made to various heads, non-essential heads. Look at the agency, that has been so controversial. So again, we're beginning to have fake agencies in this country. And then how do you explain that? So you have an agency, is a licensed agency that has a space to operate, agencies that opens account, agencies that attends meetings and so on and so forth. And then you turn around and tell us that the agency is fake. Oh dear, what is happening here? You have to ask yourself. And then you see so many headings. I just read in the papers who allocated, is it 8 point something? I don't know whether it's trillion for some churches and mosques and so on and so forth. Hey, what's happening here? Since when did we start doing that? So so many things are happening and we don't understand. So this is why I say that unfortunately for us, the National Assembly is not doing what they should do. Because they should take this thing seriously and apply due diligence and make sure that you bring a fine-tooth comb and go through the budget figures. Well, we don't have that happening now. So everything is rushed through, and then we don't even have a put-in process, to make sure that you have accurate decisions are tracked. The year survey and so on and so forth, and that does go with what the city. Yes.
Yes, I know you can go on and on. I want to bring in so you can bring on a lot of issues. Yes. Maybe we'll come back to it in just a moment, but let's still stay with economic issues. Debt. Yes. Our debts, in the ratio to GDP, is considered healthy, depending on what parameters you're looking at. But there has been an argument between the National Assembly members who are quite livid in their oversight when they invited the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Taiwo Yedele, said, you say you are exceeding the NRS is exceeding target, yet we're borrowing. The argument about borrowing. Well, he explained and said the current administration made about 80 trillion in debt due to devaluation. Total rebalancing of numbers took it up to a notch higher by about I think 20-something trillion. And then the Ways and Means securitization that was done at the twilight of the last administration took it even a notch higher. So it hasn't borrowed as much as people say it has borrowed. That in fact, some of the approved money, they haven't taken delivery of it. What do you make of this back and forth over loan issue? Is the government really transparent about loans, whether it's from multilateral, bilateral, or some of the instruments they put out, like the bonds and all of that?
This government is not transparent about anything. I will not call it spade by its name. They're not. They're not. You talk of loans and so on. It's not a problem borrowing loans, but we have the Fiscal Responsibility Act that tells us what should guide us in time to to acquire foreign loans. It's hardly you're not supposed to borrow for budget support, which is exactly what we are doing. We're supposed to borrow for fiscal projects, and so you're going to do coastal road, so you borrow for that project, and it's attached to that project, and that borrowing could be tracked. Well, this money is borrowed, and sometimes we borrow from miscellaneous sources. We go to the Middle East, we borrow. We go to multilateral financial institutions, we borrow, and then we borrow from the local market. We go to the bond, we borrow, and then people are asking. Even the World Bank is asking. So we remove subsidy from petroleum. So where's that subsidy we removed? When you ask, we have been told that sub-regional, sub-national governments, it's been shared with them. And what have they done with it? And so you are saying, like you just observed earlier, most agencies and so on, they're overshooting their budgets. That's what you've been told. Revenue budgets have been over, and then we are still borrowing. And then most of these monies have been borrowed, and then we don't even know where it's going into. And nobody actually knows where it's going into. You can't run any nation, on such basis. The opacity is daunting.
All right, so let's also talk about what I always look at the oil numbers. We were thinking that this was over, but I think it's far from over. I just saw now that from where I check my oil numbers, Brent is hitting back at 98. So Brent is approaching $100 per barrel. As of this morning, it has gone significant percentage up. WTI is around 90. So I'm even seeing that IOCs like Total Energies have actually readjusted their books because their net income has surged by almost $6 billion. So the big boys are making money. Those of us who buy at the fuel station were crying, literally. How is this? This is an additional income, what you call the excess crude account, which I don't know whether it's still operated today. These additional massive inflows that we've gotten this year, what do you make of it compared to what you're seeing in terms of utilization? I'm asking the same question different ways.
Well, I know that the excess crude account, at some point in time, I think that we actually had some good monies there during the time of Okonjo-Iweala and co. But at some point in time, the subnational government...
Yes, we had up to 20 billion at some point, almost 20 billion.
Yes, so they were up in arms, saying that this money belongs to us and so on and so forth. And then you had somebody at the center who wasn't firm enough. And of course, it's a federation. But then a person's personality at times can have an effect. And so they were able to, to do whatever they did with it. But as we speak today, I don't know if anybody knows whether we have that stabilization facility, whether it's still there. And in fact, how much money is it even being operated?
It's not regularly reported, Dr. Boniface. It's not. In fact, there was a time we were reported, we saw it in thousands of dollars under the last, and we were wondering, okay, whether it's a parallax of our eyes, whether we're seeing thousands. Yes, it got down to the thousands of dollars.
Yes. So it's not been reported. It's not been reported. Like I said earlier, that this is not how to run government. It's not how to administer any nation. We can't make progress this way because we don't know what is happening. We can't, so we just have figures being thrown at us and so on, and then we celebrate them. I mean, I celebrate Cardoso. I think that is like somebody like an oasis in the desert. Because I think he's come, and then he's come with some good values, and I think he's done a good job. And it's being recognized, across the globe. So, but we don't have too many that kind, that sort of discipline. Most of the people you have, they come with a transactional mentality, mindset. All they are doing is what is in this for me. And once they have opacity, it creates a perfect environment for them to, take some of these monies and to appropriate those monies, to themselves. I think that's the position we are in. And that's why we need people with good values to come on board.
Dr. Boniface, good way to land. I have more questions, but we're totally out of time. We don't get to know who stole what, who embezzled what as alleged until an administration is gone. Now we're seeing the Muhammadu Buhari group of what they are facing with the anti-graft agency. When this government goes, we'll see who was stealing our money from this administration. But for now, it can only be by speculation and allegation. But thank you. We appreciate you, sir. We'll continue to hold the government accountable and ask questions through minds like yours on what to do better. Nigeria belongs to all of us. Dr. Boniface Chizia is an economist joining us virtually. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And that's it on the program. Thank you for your time and, of course, your usual company. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga. Bye-bye.